The El Nino signal is getting stronger in the ocean and is forecast to start building in the atmosphere today. I'm Mark Sponsler, and welcome to the Stormsurf Video Surf Forecast for the week starting Sunday, May 7th.
Stormsurf, waves, weather, buoys, altimetry, snow, temperatures, El Nino, weather analysis, essential data for outdoor people, all the time, no hype.
Be sure and like and subscribe. Ring the bell. You get automatic notifications when the videos are posted, typically on Sunday evenings. And if you like, you can donate to the cause. Hit the special thanks button down below, a little heart with a dollar sign in it. You can give us a little tip, $1 or $2. That helps our ongoing operations, and we're about poised to go buy a server from the donations that everyone has generously given us already. We thank you very much. And to that end, we want to thank the folks that donated money last week. Sporeman, Jason, thank you very much. MC Clean Campbell, PV Sailing, Katie, thank you. Tim Caston, Cod Profe, Michael LaGuardia, my good friend from Half Moon Bay. Thank you, Michael. You really didn't have to do that, but we certainly appreciate it. Elliot Harris, again. Awesome, Elliot. And Baja Bugs, thank you all so much. Your contributions are very well received, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, so thank you. All right, let's get to work. We'll start by looking at significant wave heights for now, the South Pacific Ocean. The North Pacific, for the most part, is going to sleep. That said, there is a little tease on the models, but we're going to focus now on the Southern Hemi because, well, it's been pretty productive. Looking at significant wave heights there, we see a scale developing in the Central South Pacific with seas at 34 feet, and that's supposed to build a little while pushing northeast. Other than that, there are seas in the 28-foot range off of Patagonia, but that is outside of even the Southern California swell window, so no swells expected for our forecast area from that. But that said, Peru, Chile should see some swell from this system. Quick buoy roundup here. Current conditions will start in Northern California. The Point Reyes buoy number 029. We're looking at all the energy that's hitting that buoy from way up at 33.3 second period, super long period energy, all the way down to 5 second period wind chop. We see a bump here at about 15 seconds. That is Southern Hemi swell. And then we see a larger bump in the 9 second period range. That is locally generated wind swell. We pull all this together. We see primary swell 5 feet at 10 seconds from 303 degrees. That's that northwest wind swell, theoretically producing surf about 5 feet, but it's certainly not that big at most exposed breaks in Northern California. Then we have the Southern Hemi swell, 2.4 feet at 15.3 seconds from 210 degrees. That surf would be about 3.6 feet, but if you're at the right breaks, it is definitely a bit bigger than that. Next up, we go down to Santa Cruz, Point Santa Cruz buoy number 254. Again, looking at all the energy, you see right here a bump in about the 14 to 15 second period range, and not a whole lot else. This buoy is well shadowed from the northwest wind swell. Primary swell comes out at 1.7 feet at 14.8 seconds from 202 degrees. That's about 2.5 foot surf, something like that. And again, with the proper reef and proper location, surf is bigger than that. Going to the south end of Southern California, we're not looking at the north end because really it's all Southern Hemi swell at this point, and any buoys up north there are well shadowed, and any breaks well shadowed from northwest wind swell. All right, so we see the Southern Hemi swell hitting here as well with a nice peak in around the 15.4 second range. Primary swell 2 feet at 15.5 seconds from 205 degrees. Surf from the primary swell 3.2 feet, but again, if you're at the right spot, you get amplification from the bottom, and surf can be 1.5 times bigger or even more. And our final stop, the south shore of Oahu, the Barber's Point buoy on Oahu, buoy number 238, looking at all the energy. Now, Southern Hemi swell looking much more solid than what one would expect. The models and the best of technology seem to have missed a portion of this swell. We see it at 14.3 seconds. So, primary swell 3.5 feet at 13.7 seconds. Surf from primary swell 4.7 feet. that's probably stretching it quite a bit. You know, if you consider that Hawaiian, in reality, it's probably about that big on the face. So little bit of a disparity here going on. Not sure exactly what's going on, but regardless, there is surf coming from the south, and that's better than it being flat. We don't have images for that system. We saw it last week. That swell hit on Friday and continued through the weekend and is expected to fade as we get into the early part of the coming work week. That said, another gale has developed in the deep south central Pacific. It started on Tuesday a.m., little fetch here, not doing a whole lot, but as we got into Wednesday, seas built to 26 feet and then 29.4 feet. This reading down here is the highest seas over this entire image, located at 48.75 south, 139.5 west, so right there. Max winds were 40 knots from the south, and then we'll put this into motion. Continuing on into Wednesday evening, 29-foot seas, and then on Thursday morning, 28-foot seas fading out. That swell is heading north, should be arriving midweek into California, a little bit east for Hawaii, but we'll keep our eyes on it. All right, so what's to come for the future, for the next week? We're going to start by looking at jet stream level winds. These winds up about 30,000 feet help support the formation of gales. When those gales form, help direct their track. We're looking for a trough. Now remember, we're in the southern hemisphere, so the troughs, instead of dipping south, they push north. And what that helps do, just like right there, is a little bit of a trough there. That helps create a clockwise flow aloft. Southern hemisphere again. Everything's backwards or different than the northern hemisphere. Clockwise circulation aloft and down at the ocean surface. Of course, that's the hallmark of low pressure. Low pressure, if it's strong enough, generates winds. Winds, if they're strong enough, get traction on the ocean surface and generate seas. Seas, as they radiate away from the fetch area, get groomed, eventually turning into swell. And swell, when it makes it over the equator up into Hawaii and California, turns into surf. All right, so we have a little trough on Sunday here in the south, we'll call it the southeast Pacific. Forecast holding into Monday, and then winds build, feeding the trough better as we get into Tuesday, May 9th. Winds up to 150 knots, and that's about it, pushing well off to the north. So right there is where your circulation is going to be. Southern California, the cutoff is about 117 west, so right there. Santa Cruz is about 122 west. So this is barely in the swell window at the end as we get into Wednesday, and then pushes out of the swell window. Now right behind that as we get into Thursday, the 11th of May, notice the jet pushing hard south. That's the opposite of a trough. It's a ridge. It sets up a counterclockwise flow aloft, which is the hallmark of high pressure, and does nothing for generating swell for us in the northern hemisphere. So things quiet down a little bit as we get into Friday and Saturday, but then you see the beginnings of another trough forecast over the south central Pacific on Sunday. Not a lot of winds pushing up into it until we get into maybe Monday, but it looks like there's some hope. So it is just getting started. So let's go take a look down at the surface. Surface level pressure, surface level winds. We know we have a trough here in the South Pacific. Oh, and let's get ourselves oriented. Patagonia, Peru, Chile, the Galapagos Islands, New Zealand here. Gale in the deep South Pacific with 45-knot winds aimed off to the northeast. Lifting a bit to the north as we get into Monday. Still 40-knot winds. And then fading from 35 knots. And by Tuesday, the system pretty much gone. Maybe a secondary pulse from it Tuesday afternoon with 35, tiny area 45-knot winds. But probably... well, look at this, and right on the hairy edge of the Southern California swell window. This looks probably, maybe decent for Southern California, but also Central America, Mexico, down into Peru and Chile. Now, we know there's a big ridge building. You can see it here. Yeah, you see low pressure here, but the winds are pushing southeast. That's only aimed at Antarctica. The whole system falling southeast Thursday into Friday. That does nothing for swell production. But then as we get into Saturday, notice we know there's another trough trying to set up here. 40 to 45 knot winds start building a little bit southeast of New Zealand. They fade some secondary fetch. Not quite sure how this is all going to play out, but it looks like a generalized fetch of 30 to 35 knot winds across the South Pacific. Now that's probably only good for maybe 13 or 14 second period swell, which will decay quite a bit on the venture up into Northern California. Once you get to 16 seconds, then the decay factor becomes much less significant. So we'll have to see how this all plays out. Looking at the wave model for the South Pacific Ocean, like we said before, 34-foot seas. Here we go. Let's get that a little bit up there. 34-foot seas over a tiny area, lifting north to building to 36 feet and then 35 feet overnight by Monday, down to, again, 34 feet and continuing while fading, but lifting northeast. Good for some swell from that. We know there's some secondary fetch in that area also on Tuesday night and Wednesday. Little area of, look at this, 30-foot seas. And since it's aimed almost due north, that could get into Southern California from like just eyeballing it like 178 degrees sort of thing, and just sitting there for a day or two. Not bad. Now, we know there's this other gale off New Zealand that's falling southeast, so we're not interested in that. This system over here, though, is most interesting. It wasn't on the charts even this morning. So certainly swell if this materializes, and it's only in the next couple of days it's supposed to happen. Chile, Peru, Central America, up into Mexico, and maybe as far as Southern California, and maybe even the most exposed breaks in Northern California. All right, so that system fades out. We're already into next weekend. Gale starts building under New Zealand with 34-foot seas, fading some while pushing off to the east. We'll see how that plays out. We don't hardly believe the model's more than 4 or 5 days out, much less a week out, but at least there is hope. Now, we're not focusing on the Northern Hemisphere, but that said, that doesn't mean it isn't done. And sure enough, little gale is forecast on Monday over the northern dateline region. There's California there. Hawaii's down here. Aleutian Islands right here, Kamchatka. This gale right here was at 19-foot seas forecast, pushing just barely to 20 feet midday Monday, then fading some. Another gale right behind that off Kamchatka, building 28-foot seas, pushing over the dateline and fading. All that mess starts trying to organize in the Gulf of Alaska, producing 18-foot seas on Thursday and a broader area of 19-foot seas as we get into Friday, and then fading from there on Saturday. Swell expected to radiate into California, but of more interest, maybe Hawaii. Watch this. I'm just going to put this back. Here's the swell front right here. Here's the Hawaiian Islands. Put that into motion. See north-angled swell hitting Hawaii maybe on Saturday the 13th. So we'll see. After that, one would assume things to be fading out. It'll be the middle of May by then, and the focus will firmly be on the southern hemisphere. Looking at winds for California right there and Hawaii down here. In fact, maybe we can pull this up just a little bit. There you go. So a relatively light wind regime for Sunday around California. Trades for the Hawaiian Islands at 15 knots. So we get into Monday, even lighter winds for California, just out of the west and northwest at 5 to 10 knots. Trades 15 knots for the Hawaiian Islands. Tuesday, more of the same deal, though. Some of this northwest wind pattern starts building around Point Conception at 15 to 20 knots. Trades 15 knots for the Hawaiian Islands. Here comes that big low pressure system, not necessarily strong, but just broad in coverage as we get into Wednesday. Northwest winds 5 to 10 knots except around Point Conception. Trades fading out for the Hawaiian Islands at 10 knots. Thursday, northwest winds 10 to 15 knots for North and Central California. Light trades 10 knots for the Hawaiian Islands. Look at the size of this low. Pretty impressive. Maybe, just maybe, a little bit of El Nino-ish type enhancement. That's probably stretching it a bit, but either way, we'll take it. Some swell likely to result. Friday, northwest winds 15 knots for the California coast. Really light trades for the Hawaiian Islands. Saturday, the northwest wind event. I wouldn't even call it an event. And we're hoping that we're past all this massive upwelling. Temperatures pretty decent in Northern California in the 53 to 54 degree range, and warmer down in Southern California. We're hoping that this low pressure sort of puts a crimp in high pressure, and we just sort of stay where we are. 15-knot trades, northwest winds for Saturday. That's next weekend in California. Light trades for the Hawaiian Islands. And as we get into Sunday, a light wind regime a week from now for California, and just typical 10 to 15 knot trades for the Hawaiian Islands. So not too much of any serious upwelling and wind forecast for California, though still not light and glassy north of Point Conception. Surf spot forecast for Santa Cruz. We're looking at surf in the 2 to 3 foot range, and most of this is now, this is not picking up the fading southern hemiswell. This is just locally generated wind swell. You can see it here, swell size, this is swell height, 2 to 3 feet at 9 to 10 seconds sort of thing. And then you can see the next swell coming. This is, we'll get it down here, like Wednesday, Thursday. You can see the periods poking through the model. This is only showing the surf from primary swell, which happens to be wind swell in the 2.5 foot range at 10 seconds. But then there's bits of that new swell at 2 feet at 16 seconds. And you see it sort of popping in and out here. And then as we get later in the week, surf picking up in the 4 to 5 to 6 foot range. This is actually next weekend. That's wind swell from that low in the Gulf of Alaska, with swell size in the 4.5 foot range at 11, maybe 12 seconds sort of thing. Looking down in San Diego, we see surf slowly fading from the southern hemiswell in the 2.5 foot range. And then we see bits of what looks like new swell, and we'll sort of do this both at the same time. Here you go, in the 19-second period range as we get into Wednesday morning, and surf height building from about 1.5 feet. There's the wind swell mixed in. As we get into Thursday, 2 to 2.5 feet at 15 to 16 seconds, and continuing on through the week. So surf heights building to 3.5 feet, and then slowly fading from there. Looking on the south shore of Oahu, swell slowly fading, surf heights in the 2.5 foot range sort of thing. Then we see something bigger developing here as we get into next weekend. I believe that is, yes, that is wraparound energy from the northwest. But looking here, the early part of the week, Sunday into Monday, 1.5 feet at 12 seconds sort of thing, and then just falling away to nothing, and then wrap around swell. Let's go look at the North Shore. Here's the North Shore, which is basically flat, but you can see as we get into next Friday, Saturday, from that low up in the Gulf of Alaska, or the forecast low, surf heights in the 7 to 8 foot range on the face. Swell size 5 to 6 feet at, we'll say 12 seconds sort of thing. So something to keep our eyes on. Far from guaranteed yet. That big low has to build and get into the Gulf of Alaska. But if it does, even reasonably close to what's forecast, North Shore of Oahu could get yet some more surf. And then finally, the precipitation forecast. We're just looking at California. We see a little bit of rain forecast this afternoon and evening into North California, reaching down to about the Golden Gate on right at sunrise on Monday. Maybe a little snow flurry sort of thing for the Tahoe area. But then after that, things just fade out. There's our low circulating in the Gulf as we get into Wednesday and Thursday. But no precipitation, high pressure in control relative to California, and that probably is going to be the end of winter. The snow forecast for Olympic Valley, maybe 1 inch, and that's all going to happen in the next 24 hours, something like that. I believe they have gotten upwards of 8 to 10 inches over the past couple of days. That's up high, not sure about down low. Pretty impressive considering how late in the season it is. We'll take a look at the snow levels. This really tells the whole picture here. So currently, this is the base of Olympic Valley, the black line here, at about 6,200 feet. This is the summit top of Granite Chief, or Palisades, at about 9,000 feet. The red is liquid precipitation if it were to rain. The gray, sleet. The white is snow. The interface between is the freeze level, the 32-degree line. So you see the snow level at about 7,000 feet through into about another day or so, and then Monday night into early Tuesday, things start warming up with the snow level creeping up to about 8,200 feet. And then as we get into the 11th of May, it's just upward from there, 12,000 to 12,500 foot freezing line. So again, the concern is when you get into this area with all the snowpack that's still there. I mean, there's still snow on the ground at 6,000 feet and a whole bunch way up higher than that. In the high Sierra, not even that high at 8,000 feet. At Yosemite, there's a lot of snow up above the cliffs, and even freezing and icy conditions on trails approaching, getting up over the edge at Yosemite. You get all this heat, and then the concern starts again about flooding, rapid snow melt. The last event was not as bad as expected, and for the most part, flooding was not an issue. But here we go again. So something to be mindful of as we get later into the week and into next weekend. All right, so let's go further out. We're going to go to the long-term outlook, checking out the Madden Julian Oscillation, the MJO, and ENSO, the El Nino Southern Oscillation. These two oscillations are the biggest determiners of long-range weather, in our case, surf, and we're not interested in snow. So surf in the north and mainly the southern hemisphere. We'll start by discussing the MJO, the Madden Julian Oscillation. It's this periodic weather oscillation that traverses around the planet. There's two phases, the active phase and the inactive phase. The active phase on one side of the planet, inactive phase on the other. They rotate opposite each other, west to east around the planet on the equator. The active phase is the one we're interested in. It's like a low pressure system. When it moves over the Pacific, it imparts energy to the jet stream. A stronger jet stream, of course, helps feed storm development. Also, the active phase creates cloudiness, and it can reverse trade winds. And this is very important for the formation of El Nino. When the active phase moves over the West Pacific, like I said, it can dampen trade winds, if not out and out reverse them. What that helps do is take warm water that's in the West Pacific and starts pushing it off to the east, under the equator, following the thermocline. Eventually, that ball of warm water will impact Ecuador. It takes about 3 months to go from the West Pacific to the East Pacific, and then it'll erupt to the surface, creating a warm water slick off of Ecuador and the Galapagos Islands. That's called a Kelvin wave. If you have successive strong enough active phases of the MJO, they can create successive Kelvin waves, and that can help usher in El Nino. And that is exactly what has been happening since about December of 2022. So just the past 5 months, we've had 3, if not 4 active phases of the MJO that have created Kelvin waves, and the balance of warm water in the Pacific is definitely in transition, with warm water previously all just balled up in the far West Pacific, now starting to flow like a river to the East Pacific. The cold water off of Peru and Ecuador that has been so prevalent during La Nina years is all but gone. If you follow this channel, you've seen the transition. We'll show you some of the slides of the change in surface water temperature difference over the past 5 months. But clearly, an El Nino-like pattern is starting to manifest on the ocean surface. Next up, we're waiting to see that manifest in the atmosphere, and we are tantalizingly close. So, what are we looking at here? We're looking for signs of the active phase of the MJO, the one that pumps energy to the jet stream that helps create storm development. Now, let's be clear. The best correlation of the active phase of the MJO is in the northern hemisphere in winter months. But that said, there's still like a 50% correlation in the southern hemisphere. And so if you have a good, strong active phase of the MJO, it'll feed energy in the jet stream in the southern hemisphere, and that'll create storms, and then you'll get on a whole run of southern hemi swells. But it's a bit delayed because it takes, like a week for the swells to make it from the southern hemi up into the California area. So you got to kind of watch it in the timing's a bit funky. There's a bit of a delay there. All right, so what are we looking at here? Well, this is data from the TAO buoy array, a series of buoys strung across the equator used for monitoring El Nino. There are wind sensors on those buoys. This is the East Pacific here. This is the West Pacific here. This is the equator. This is the dateline right here. That is New Guinea there. Look at the arrows. The stronger the arrow, the stronger the winds, and of course the direction is pretty self-evident. East trades over the East Pacific. East trades pretty strong over the Central Pacific. East trades over the dateline moderately strong, but getting weaker as you go into the West Pacific. Okay, the active phase of the MJO will dampen trade winds. All right, so this is the actual wind speeds. But what really matters is not the hard wind speeds, but the difference from normal for this time of year. The active phase moves over here. It'll dampen the trade winds. It might not completely erase them, but the net effect is because of that can create enough of a reduce the flow from east to west so that warm water that's over here can start sloshing east in the form of a Kelvin wave. All right, so anomalies. Difference in wind speed. So yeah, winds are strong here, but looking here, the arrows are really not going anywhere, so pretty much neutral. In the Central Pacific, a little bit stronger out of the east than normal, but not hardly at all. And then the all-important Kelvin wave generation area, the West Pacific, where if you get the active phase over here, it can create a Kelvin wave. Winds are dead calm. No westerly anomalies, but not blowing hard out of the east. This is a significant change from where we've been for the past 3 years, where it's just been non-stop nuking east anomalies stronger than normal. We're back into a normal pattern, if not moving towards an El Nino-ish pattern. All right, let's go look at the forecast. Actually, before we do that, we're just going to take a look at what is the tendency of the winds in the Pacific over the past 5 days. We're only interested just on the equator. So South America there, Central America there, Hawaii there, New Guinea there. 0 is the equator, okay? And the Kelvin wave generation area right in this area. 5 degrees north and south of the equator. There's the dateline right here. So out to 170 to about as far west as you can get, 125. So a box right in there. So we're looking, the blues are easterly anomalies. So easterly, stronger than normal easterly winds would be the inactive phase of the MJO, and that was on the 1st of May. 2nd of May, pretty much the same thing. The 3rd of May, westerly anomalies started building just a little bit. On the 4th, they're still there. On the 5th, they're still there. So it looks like a transition from the inactive phase to perhaps the active phase. This is the forecast for the east and west component of the wind for the next 2 weeks. This chart got updated. The GFS is now a 2-week model, not a 1-week model. So the owner of this chart decided to expand it, and that's a good thing. Now, we have 2 models we're really looking at, the GFS and the CFS. The GFS is the typical NOAA's main global model used for, modeling large-scale weather systems. But it differs some from the CFS, and you'll see it here in a minute. The CFS is more like your super long range, like out a month, 2 months. The GFS doesn't even try to go that far. It has a hard time even going out a week. Typically we don't look at it more than a week old. So this is what, 5 days per tick mark here. So a week cuts off right there. So according to this, let's see, here's the date line right here. Far West Pacific starts about 125 east. Kelvin wave generation area is right in this area. The blues are easterly anomalies. The yellows are westerly anomalies. So think of this as the inactive phase of the MJO. And according to this model, for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 days, 6 days, we'll say the next week, looks like the inactive phase of the MJO in control. That's really weird, though, considering the chart we just looked at said there's been westerly anomalies in this area already for the past 2 or 3 days. Maybe that's just that right there, and we're going to sort of fall back into a neutral pattern. But certainly a week from now, the reds are westerly anomalies. This is over the maritime continent. And you can see it seeping into the Pacific, making it to the date line a week from now, and then holding solid. So something is starting to move in the right direction yet again. So here's another model going out 2 weeks. This is the forecast, and this is a statistic model, a different model yet again from the previous two we were just talking about. And this shows the tendency for precipitation, or, cloud cover, okay? This is outgoing long wave radiation. Fancy words for just the sun bouncing off the ocean surface. If you have a bunch of clouds, the sun can't reflect back up into the atmosphere. The blue is indicative of clouds, the red indicative of high pressure clear skies. So this would be the active phase of the MJO. And according to this, let's get oriented. There's South America, Central America, Hawaii, New Guinea there, dateline right there, equator right there, the all-important Kelvin wave generation area right in here, whereas if the active phase is over this area and it produces west anomalies strong enough, then you can get a Kelvin wave. And of course, successive Kelvin waves can help usher in El Nino. So according to this today, active phase of the MJO developing over the Kelvin wave generation area, building 5 days from now, building more 10 days from now, building more 15 days from now. Now, the dynamic model, the GEFS model, basically a cousin of the GFS model, it's an ensemble version of that, saying basically the same thing, but maybe a little bit weaker. Here's the last panel, 15 days out, 2 weeks out. This is the statistic model saying, we'll call it a moderate plus strength active phase of the MJO. Dynamic model saying, we'll say moderate active phase. The difference here is really just on day 5 of the model. You can see stronger, weaker. It's all kind of noise. Looks like the active phase of the MJO is coming. A drill down of those two models, statistic here, dynamic here, but a day in the future. So the initial start times aren't the same. This is May 7th. This is May 6th. Okay, so things change. Anyway, okay, so how do you read this? This is called a phase diagram chart. Just shows you which position or phase on the Earth the active phase of the MJO is. So the MJO moves from the Indian Ocean to the Maritime Continent, to the West Pacific, to the East Pacific, under the United States, across the Atlantic, over Africa, back to the Indian Ocean. The heavy dot is where the active phase is, so over the Maritime Continent, like Bali. The further the dot is away from this circle, the stronger it is. So we'll say a modest active phase. According to this model, there's 3 different flavors of the CA, the ARM, and the PCL. But the CA model suggests a strong active phase in the West Pacific 2 weeks from now, where the 2 others say extremely weak over the West Pacific. The dynamic model suggests basically the same thing and sort of splitting the difference. A modest active phase of the MJO over the West Pacific 2 weeks from now. Either way, that's good. That can help create another Kelvin wave. Next up, the upper level model, just showing areas favorable for precipitation, more confirmation or denial of what we think is actually going on. The greens areas favorable for precipitation, the active phase of the MJO. The oranges and yellows, inactive phase of the MJO, dry air. So let's get ourselves oriented. South America, Central America, Hawaii is that little speck right there. New Guinea there. The equator right there, dateline roughly there. Now this runs about a week ahead of what the other models do because it's in the upper level. The Jetstream and the upper level pattern sort of races ahead, and down at lower levels of the atmosphere, that drags behind. So right now this suggests wet air, active phase of the MJO building over the Pacific, continuing its trek across the Pacific into about the end of May, something like that. And then the inactive phase starts setting up the end of May, making its way across the Pacific into mid-June, with a weak active phase maybe starting to develop in the West Pacific after that. All right, so we go to the CFS model. Now, again, this is yesterday's model, May 6th, not the 7th, and things change from day to day. So it's sort of like trying to get a hold and figure out what's going on with all these models, because they all post at different times and things aren't always completely consistent. All right, this is back to the east-west component of the wind. The reds and oranges are westerly anomalies. One's typically associated with the active phase of the MJO. The blues, easterly anomalies, typically associated with the inactive phase of the MJO. This is the whole planet on one chart, though. All right, so the date line runs right up the middle. The far West Pacific starts at 125 east, and this is past performance here. This is the forecast down here. And the Kelvin wave generation area ends about 170 west. So this box right in here is what we're interested in. Now you can see also the solid contour, the active phase of the MJO. This is one back in February, active phase with westerly anomalies making its way across the planet. Followed the dotted contour, inactive phase of the MJO that kind of fell apart. And in late March and early April, a weak active phase. Then we're just leaving the final bits of the inactive phase of the MJO today. Here's today. And according to this model, westerly anomalies already firmly established over the Kelvin wave generation area. And you see 1, 2, 3 solid contours. Really, you can connect them all together. This is the active phase of the MJO forecast making its way across the Pacific through to about May 20th. Now, what the real surprise is here, see when you go active, inactive, active, inactive, and you go blue, orange, blue, orange. The active phase ends, but westerly anomalies persist. Okay, part of this bit about the teaser, the intro part of this video was the establishment of El Nino in the atmosphere. The MJO, this periodic pulse, can get things going that can create Kelvin waves, that can create warm water that starts getting established off of Ecuador. When it gets established there long enough, typically about 3 or 4 months, then it starts creating a feedback loop, and things start changing in the atmosphere, and the atmosphere starts reorganizing itself. And this is exactly what we think is going on here. Because of the warm water building up off of Ecuador, all of a sudden you start getting yourself into this persistent westerly anomaly pattern. That's exactly what the models are showing. All right, and it gets even more interesting. So let's go yet one more. So this is the CFS model going out 3 months. Past performance down here, the forecast up here. Date line runs right up the middle. Now you can see, and we do this every week pretty much, but it's you can see the persistence of blues, easterly anomalies that held into about February, and then we started moving into this. Well, it's blue, it's yellow. It's blue, it's yellow. That would be inactive phase or La Nina. Active phase, cutting a hole in La Nina. Little bit of return of the inactive phase. Another active phase of the MJO with westerly anomalies. Weak inactive phase. And then here's what we think is the current active phase of the MJO building. And notice after this, no more inactive phase. It sort of looks like there's maybe one tried here, but westerly anomalies. Forecast just taking hold of the date line and not letting go. Again, we think that would be because of warmer than normal temperatures in the East Pacific. That'd be over here. Starting to change the jet stream pattern, starting to get a hold of the atmosphere and reconfiguring it away from not La Nina, away from not neutral, but towards a global El Nino type pattern. So we're and typically that takes about 3 months, 4 months. So the first real signs of some El Nino-ish and Kelvin wave generation type stuff started happening somewhere in February. So February to March to April to May, sure enough, right on schedule. Looks like it's starting to develop. All right, so let's overlay the MJO here. Solid contour is the active phase of the MJO. Here's our first active phase back in January, second one in February, third one in April. All three produce Kelvin waves. Here's the next one forecast, and notice they appear to be getting a little bit more stronger, holding together better. Now, we're supposed to have an inactive phase, this dotted contour here in the we'll say late May to late June period, but westerly anomalies persisting, and then another active phase with very strong westerly anomalies forecast. This would make a huge Kelvin wave, or very strong Kelvin wave, that would traverse the Pacific, we'll say to July to August, September, arriving in October, erupting to the surface, and just that, this would be the crowning grace on the El Nino development. That would get us our peak in the November-ish time frame atmospherically, and that would set us up for a rather interesting winter, assuming all this plays out as forecast. Now, let's overlay the low-pass filter. What is really going on? So this dotted contour, in fact, I could take this away just so you can see. The dotted contour is a high-pressure bias, the La Nina signal. You can see in January, it was in control and had been for 3 years over the date line right there. It started moving off to the east by getting bombarded by successive active phases of the MJO, and today is basically due south of California and forecast to continue getting thinner and having less influence over the Pacific beyond. The solid contour is the El Nino low pressure bias, which was over the maritime continent last at the Christmas time frame, now centered just west of the date line. Forecast building to right on the date line as we get into August. That's what's going to be fueling all this. This is the El Nino signal building in the atmosphere. So we're moving from a La Nina pattern here to almost 7 months from now, an El Nino pattern. All is on track, as this model has done a really good job of projecting all of this. It started saying this back in October of last year, and here we are, pretty much where it said we would be. All right, what's going on down in the ocean? All right, we've talked about Kelvin waves, the active phase of the MJO, westerly anomalies. Is there any evidence that the distribution of warm water in the Pacific is changing from where we were a year ago or 6 months ago? This is, again, data from the TAO buoy array, series of buoys strung across the equator used for monitoring El Nino. That's exactly what they're doing. These little lines here, these are the anchor lines on the buoys. The X's are sensors on those anchor lines. They collect temperature data. This is all in centigrade, and then you can use it to look at the balance of warm water. Darker colors, the 29-degree isotherm right here. I think it was at 175 or 180 last week. Well, it's locked solid there. The big thing is the 28-degree centigrade isotherm, which I think was at 150 last week, is now extending the whole way across the Pacific. So that's pretty warm temperatures, at least on the surface and at depth. The 26-degree isotherm is down here. I mean, there's just a river of warm water. There's no cold water anywhere to be found. But it's not the actual temperatures, it's the anomalies. Difference from normal for this time of year, same story. No cold water anywhere to be found. Back in December, it was all cold over here in the East Pacific, but now you see a river of 2-degree plus temperatures, and a mega, like multiple Kelvin waves are either impacting or in the process of impacting here with 5-degree above normal anomalies here off of Ecuador. Another model basically paints the same data. Now this gets it, rather than getting its data from sensors, it gets it from satellites that are measuring the height of the ocean surface and inferring what temperatures are doing down deep in the ocean, down 150 meters. But you can see it here. Warm water holding off of the far west Pacific and maritime continent. A Kelvin wave or you can't even hardly break them apart anymore. It's just a river of warm water, and then this giant bolus of much warmer temperatures. This would be Ecuador here. So, and to get from here to here takes 3 months. So as of right now, we're into, let's see, May to June, July, August. Through August, there's a river of warm water pushing east, and that assumes no more Kelvin waves, but we know there's an active phase of the MJO setting up right now. It'll probably tap this warm water, create yet another Kelvin wave, or push more warm water down into the pipe. We'll see another one of these dark spikes eventually starting to set up here, maybe a month from now. So this is the source of the data for that second model. This is sea level anomalies, the height of the ocean surface. You have a satellite, it rotates polar orbit over the North and South Pole. The Earth rotates underneath that. And over a period of a week, it can literally cover every square inch of every ocean, and it can detect the height of the sphere of the ocean. That is, take out the wind waves, take out the swell, take out the waves, take out the tides. And is the sphere higher or lower than normal? Why would you care? Well, if you have warm water at depth, it expands. And what that would do is displace water above it up a little. So if the sphere is higher than normal, you'll say, oh, there's warm water at depth. Likewise, if you have cold water, it contracts, creates a divot on the ocean surface. So let's look at this chart. We have Chile, Peru, Ecuador, Central America, Baja, Hawaii is right there, the equator there, dateline there, New Guinea there. These oranges are positive anomalies, 5 centimeters above normal. The down there is 20 and 25. New Guinea, we think water spills off this way. Some of it bleeds off, but most of it gets caught, trapped by Coriolis forces and the thermocline, pushes the whole way across the Pacific. And here we go, 5, 10, 10, 15 centimeter above normal water, a normal heights, suggesting warm water, that river, the whole way across the Pacific. Now, and also notice, they are extending south down into Chile and north up into Central America, making progress. Eventually, they'll work their way the whole way up here into California as more warm water builds in this area. So far, everything looking good. Upper ocean heat anomaly chart. This sort of just puts everything in a time perspective. This is the West Pacific here. This is the East Pacific here. The blues colder than normal temperatures. So this is a year ago in May of 2022. The La Nina signal still in control all the way through last summer. Yeah, we did get a Kelvin wave. It made it across, but nothing followed it. It takes successive active phases of the MJO, creating successive Kelvin waves to sort of puncture the La Nina pattern and start pushing you towards El Nino. Then we got a little bit of a Kelvin wave back in November and December, not much. And then we had active phase in January, creating 1, 2, and now 3 Kelvin waves. And you just see this, it's just a river, warm water. You can see the peak of it all in here, starting to discharge a bit and all moving off to the east, the classic La Nina pattern. What's going on in the ocean surface? Now here, this is even more important, all right? It's not that there are warm waters off of Peru, and let's get ourselves oriented here. Chile, Peru, Ecuador, Central America, Baja, Hawaii out here. Notice the blues here. That's colder than normal temperatures, but notice the reds along Peru and Ecuador. Now, not as dark red as they were last week or the week before that, suggesting that there is some discharging, or the first of the real Kelvin waves is starting to fade some. But what really is noticeable this week is this right here, this finger of warm water. It was there, it was trying to get organized, but this week it looks much more solid with much more warmth and covering out to 140, if not even 150 west to a point south of Hawaii. Now, when we say successive active phases of the MJO creating successive Kelvin waves, and we see that here, and the trades take that warm water that's erupting off of Ecuador and start dragging it across the Pacific, exactly like what we're seeing here. And that, because that water is a lot warmer than what has been there, creates a lot of evaporation. That evaporation then starts dragging weather that's typically over in the West Pacific, starts dragging it east, changes the upper level circulation, the Walker circulation. We're not going to get into that. But this is the beginnings of what we think is a change in the Walker circulation towards an El Nino pattern. Now, that said, look at the blues here. This is the high pressure out here, that real warm water there that doesn't really matter. That's underneath the center of a La Nina-induced high pressure system that has created a lot of north winds and upwelling along the California coast. We think we're going to keep our eyes on this, but we think this is going to start collapsing. I mean, seasonally, it should be collapsing right about now, but we also have that big low pressure system in the Gulf of Alaska. That's certainly going to cut out the formation of high pressure for a while, and just that in and of itself will allow the sun to start warming temperatures here and less draw up from deep down in the ocean. That combined with whatever this is going to start doing to the atmosphere, almost got to wonder if this doesn't have some impact on that low pressure system that's forecast for the Gulf of Alaska too. As if there's some sort of feedback loop already starting. We expect to see this fade really quick and at least turn to neutral in the next couple of weeks. But that's just a guess. Sea surface temperature trend for the past 7 days. So we see this is South America here. We see a little bit of cooling along the coast of Peru and Ecuador. Now, that's not cooling like cold temperatures. It just says over the past 7 days, temperatures have faded a little bit. We saw that actually on this image, just eyeballing it and remembering what was happening last week. It was a lot hotter here. So this confirms that. But this also suggests, remember that finger, this finger here that's building? Well, you can see it here. Water temperatures warming out to 140, maybe 145 west. So that building El Nino-ish signal taking hold. And then the overview. The real El Nino classic sign is warm water from here down to about here, forming a triangle going out like this and up like this. And we clearly see the first signs of that since December, the beginning of a defined El Nino signal, assuming more Kelvin waves erupting here, which seems completely realistic, and assuming more active phases of the MJO pumping yet more warm water this way. If anything, this area will only get hotter and more pronounced. All right, ocean surface currents. And we don't often get to be in a situation where we get to see some sort of a change. So, and I don't know whether you can see the fine details in this, but this is New Guinea here. The equator's right here, and there's little thin lines pushing from west to east in this area, suggesting the active phase of the MJO, creating westerly anomalies, pushing surface waters this way. But you see that continuing here, 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 very faint, the whole way across the Pacific. Then as we move, pull this way in. Now look at the strength of the current, much stronger, racing west-east. Typically, this is all reversed, and the trades are blowing the surface waters from this direction to this direction. But now we see a steady westward flow just about the whole way across the Pacific. It's not super defined right in here. We'd like to see that be stronger, and we think it will be. It get us to about August or September, and this whole equatorial current will probably end up looking like this the whole way across the Pacific, and that just reinforces the warm water pattern, and also gives us clear signals that the Walker circulation is changing and that trades are going to collapse the whole way across the Pacific, and that is really the hallmark of a strong El Nino. Sea surface temperature trend in the Nino 1.2 area. This is right there by the Galapagos in Ecuador. Temperatures, well, they can't get a whole lot warmer today. 2 degrees and 331,000, so 2 1/3 degrees above normal. And they've been above normal since somewhere in March, something like that. I mean, really above normal. So no change there. The Nino 3.4 index, the official El Nino monitoring region, that area on the equator south of California out to about the dateline, 5 degrees north and south of the equator, continuing on its upward trend, not that far. 305 thousandths of a degree, 1/3 of a degree above normal. You have to be at 1/2 degree above normal to even be remotely in the El Nino area. So clearly El Nino not yet manifest in the Nino 3.4 region. That said, there is nothing to believe that these temperatures aren't going to continue to head upwards. So what's going on in the atmosphere, right? We know we have warming temperatures building on the equator, very warm in the East Pacific. We know there's a whole river of warm water in the pipe heading to Ecuador. Does the atmosphere yet think that we're in an El Nino pattern? Sea surface temperatures suggest we're not in El Nino yet. Let's go take a look at pressure patterns. We look at Tahiti and Darwin. This is the Southern Oscillation Index. Difference in pressure between Tahiti and the Pacific and Darwin over the Indian Ocean. When pressure is lower in Tahiti, the index goes negative. Well, today it's at 11.13, so not negative. But you see it's been negative at times. In fact, a bit so at times, but nothing too off the charts. Okay, this is directly influenced by a whole host of things, but mainly the active and inactive phase of the MJO. We've been in the inactive phase of the MJO, and you can see the positive numbers for the most part the past, 8 or 10 days, whatever it is. And then these negative numbers back here were the last active phase of the MJO. All right, the 30-day average, it's just literally a 30-day average. It's your active-inactive phase of the MJO indicator. Today, pretty much dead neutral, 0.21 degree, 0.21. It's not degrees, just 0.21. You can see we were negative there for a while, driven by the active phase of the MJO. We're in the inactive phase. No surprise that this is going up a little bit, but we know the active phase of the MJO is building as we speak. So we expect both this and this to start heading down. By next week's video, we should be in negative territory. The 90-day average is the El Nino La Nina indicator. Today's value, 1.64. Where were we a month ago? Well, we were up at 5 roughly, so it's steadily headed downward. We're not neutral yet, though we're very close, and give it a month or so, we should be in negative territory. In fact, let's go look at all this on the graph. Here's the 30-day moving SOI graphed out. We can go back to January 2021. The zero line right here, when you're positive, that's La Nina or La Nina-ish. Really, when you're at 10 or above, basically, it's La Nina. You can see the downward spikes are the active phases of the MJO. The upward spikes are the inactive phases. So you can see we had more or stronger inactive phases than we had active phases, which drove the average up to like plus 23 back last summer. We have held there, but then starting January, we just fell off a cliff. We've been holding neutral here for a month, something like that. But the expectation is with the coming active phase of the MJO, this is going to start going more negative. And then finally, the sea surface temperature forecast for the Nino 3.4 region, the official El Nino monitoring region, from the CFS version 2 model. This is a significant upgrade from last week. Now, this is the raw data, so it's always a little bit higher than normal. So, temperatures, April, where are we? We're into May, something like that. So, this would be mid-May, so this is actually about May right here. This suggests we're at 0.4 of a degree above normal. That's pretty close. As we get into July, temperatures going up to 1.6 degrees above normal. That's clearly El Nino territory. And as we get into November, temperatures up to 2.6 degrees above normal. That's super El Nino territory. Now, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. This is raw data. The PDF corrected. Maybe a little bit too conservative, but we'll see. It suggests temperatures in July going to 1.3 or 1.25 degrees, which is clearly El Nino. In fact, we should be in El Nino territory by about the middle of this month. Give it about another 2 weeks, something like that. And then temperatures going up to 2 degrees above normal as we get into October. Again, super El Nino territory. We're sort of splitting hairs. Is it 2 or 2.5? I don't know. Either way, that's pretty warm in terms of historical temperatures. Sea surface temperature comparison. We're going back in time. January 1st, 2023. The blues, colder than normal temperatures. There's Chile, Peru, Galapagos Islands, Central America, Hawaii, equator right there, dateline right there. So that's where we were. in January. Every week since then, things have gotten warmer and warmer. By the time we got to February 5th, this warming pattern started building off of Peru. By the end of February, early March, building more in areas, still not quite really getting strong, but later part of March, very much warming there. The beginnings of the little cool, the warm tongue, if you will. And then we go out to April 1st, the 8th. Look at how warm when that first Kelvin wave really started hitting. Look at how much it warmed. You know trades were going to start dragging those temperatures. And sure enough, so we get into the end of April. There's the beginning of the sign. We go one more. Clear El Nino type signals starting to develop. So how does this compare to the El Nino, the super strong El Nino of 97? So on May 6, 1997, here's what we look like, and we'll just see if we can sort of swap back and forth here. There is where we are today. That was 97. So today, I'd say we are still stronger than what we were in 97. The question is, will we stay that way? I mean, this 97 one, it's really started getting some traction, just over the past week, whereas our current El Nino, it's building, but doesn't have as much of a lead on the 97 El Nino as it used to have. Now, the other thing I'm looking for is, can we go back here? Just looking at the cool pool here, just the past couple of weeks off California. We'll start from April 15th. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, still pretty much the same. Hasn't changed. It tries to get some traction in warming up, and now we're right back to where we were. So that said, temperatures off of San Francisco are warmer than what they were. They were in the 49 to 50 degree range. Now they're 53 and even 54 in some of the warmer locations. So for right now, small southern hemiswell fading in the water for California and Hawaii. Another one due into California midweek, something like that. Another gale forming down south, which will create yet another southern hemiswell, and theoretically yet another gale about a week from now, producing perhaps yet a fourth swell. So the transition to summer, not over yet, but certainly getting more that way. That said, Gulf gale is forecast, maybe producing yet one more swell, sort of wind swell more like, for the north shore of Oahu and California. Hopefully that won't interfere too much with the southern hemiswell forecast in and around the same time. But there is surf. That is good news. It is not epic. It's not off the charts historically, but we are transitioning out of La Nina. We're officially neutral right now per the SOI. I mean, we're just hovering literally at dead neutral. That said, clear El Nino signs are developing. The El Nino warm tongue is building off of Ecuador, reaching to a point south of Hawaii. We think the atmosphere is already starting to pick up on some of that. We are in transition. We really just want to see the collapse of the cool pool off of California. That'd be the end of the La Nina signal. And then we're off to the races, and it's only the beginning of May. It'll be interesting to see where we are as we get into June and July. My guess is by somewhere in mid to late July, a transition towards a clear El Nino pattern, both not only in the ocean, but atmospherically, storm-wise, southern hemi-wise, that we should see a significant increase in southern hemi storms as we get later into the summer, let's say late July, early August, and then potentially an early start to the fall season in late August with extra tropical cyclones recurving off of Japan, getting caught by an enhanced jet stream fed by El Nino, going extra tropical into the Gulf of Alaska, and potentially making for some large early season surf. Of course, that's all a bit of a guess at this time, but there's nothing to say that we aren't heading at least somewhere in that flavor of a direction. So that's all good news. We are heading upwards and looking forward, and that's great. All right, so if you enjoyed the video, give us a thumbs up. If you have any questions, comments, concerns you don't understand, write it up. We'll be happy to reply. Give us a donation if you feel so inclined. And other than that, we will do this again next week, Same time, same channel. Thanks for watching.